The human ship did not look impressive as it entered the orbit of the alien homeworld. Its hull was dull gray, scarred by long travel, and smaller than the warships that guarded the planet. To the Virexal Empire, it looked like a fragile thing that should not have survived the journey at all. Captain Elias Ward stood alone on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. He did not try to look brave. He did not try to look confident. He only tried to look calm. That was the hardest part. This was humanity's first official contact with the Virexal, an ancient species whose empire stretched across dozens of systems. Their ships were larger, their weapons were stronger, their technology was older and more refined. By all known measures, humans were the weaker side. Everyone knew it. The crew had been ordered to remain on standby. Only Ward would go down to the surface. The Virexal had demanded it that way. One human. No guards, no weapons, no symbols of power. Ward had agreed. When the shuttle landed, the doors opened into a vast hall of crystal and light. The floor was smooth and reflective, glowing faintly beneath his boots. Tall, alien figures lined the chamber, their bodies tall and sharp in shape, skin like polished stone, eyes glowing softly in colors that shifted with emotion. At the far end of the hall sat Queen Sarathan. She was taller than the others, her form wrapped in flowing layers of translucent material that shimmered as she moved. A crown-like structure rose naturally from her head, not placed there, but grown as part of her body. Her eyes were deep and bright, ancient and alert. Ward walked forward alone. Every step echoed. He could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes following him. Some were curious, some were hostile, some were afraid. He stopped at the marked point on the floor and waited. The Queen studied him in silence. Her expression was unreadable to a human. Finally, she spoke, her voice smooth and clear, translated instantly by the device at Ward's ear. "You are smaller than I expected," she said. Ward nodded once. "Many people say that, Your Majesty." A ripple of quiet reaction passed through the court. Humor was rare here. Unexpected humor, even more so. The Queen tilted her head slightly. "You do not kneel. I was not instructed to," Ward replied calmly. "If that was an error, I apologize." The Queen considered him for a long moment. "No, you will stand." That alone caused murmurs among the court. Humans had studied Virexal culture. Standing before the Queen was not normal. It was reserved for equals or condemned prisoners. Ward felt the tension tighten. "You come as a representative of your species," the Queen continued. "Tell me why the Virexal Empire should not remove humanity from the board of existence before it grows into a problem." The words were spoken without anger, without threat, as if she were discussing weather or trade routes. Ward did not rush his answer. "Because," he said, "we don't want what you have." That drew attention. The Queen's eyes brightened slightly. "Explain. We don't want your territory. We don't want your people. We don't want your throne. We just want to exist without being crushed by someone bigger than us." Silence followed. Some of the alien commanders shifted uneasily. Others looked amused. The Queen leaned back slightly. "That is not how the galaxy works." Ward met her gaze. "It is how humans work." Before the Queen could respond, movement spread through the chamber. Several high-ranking Virexals stepped forward. Commanders, scholars, war oracles. This alone was shocking. None interrupted the Queen. Ever. One of them spoke, voice sharp with urgency.
"Your Majesty, we must proceed."
The Queen's posture stiffened. "Now?" "Yes." She looked displeased, but she gestured for them to speak. The lead oracle turned toward the Queen, then toward the human. Its glowing eyes flickered rapidly. a sign of intense thought. Our projections are complete, it said. All paths converge on the same conclusion. The Queen's voice dropped. State it. The Oracle hesitated, then spoke clearly. For the Virexhal Empire to survive the coming convergence, you must serve the human. The words struck the chamber like a physical force. Ward blinked. I'm sorry, what? The court erupted. Voices rose. Cries of disbelief echoed off the crystal walls. Even seasoned commanders looked shaken. The Queen rose to her full height, radiating controlled fury. You dare speak those words in this hall? The Oracle did not back down. We dare because they are true. Another stepped forward. We have examined millions of futures. In nearly all, the Empire falls. Crushed by wars, alliances, and forces we cannot control. And the others? The Queen demanded. In the others, the Oracle said, we follow humanity. The Queen's gaze snapped toward. He raised both hands slowly. I just got here. The court quieted slightly, confusion replacing outrage. The Queen turned back to her advisors. You speak of service. Define it. The lead commander answered. Not slavery, not obedience, service of direction. We place our strategic future under human judgment during the convergence period. Ward felt his stomach tighten. This was not what Earth had prepared him for. The Queen looked shaken now, though she hid it well. You would have your queen bow to a species that barely holds a dozen systems? Yes, the Oracle replied, because size is not the deciding factor. What is? She asked quietly. Adaptation, the Oracle said. Chaos tolerance. Creative survival. The Queen was silent for a long time. Ward could feel the moment stretching. History balancing on the edge of a decision he had never asked to influence. Finally she spoke. Human, she said, her voice steady but heavy. Did you plan this? Ward shook his head. No, Your Majesty. I planned to talk. Maybe negotiate. Maybe fail. Then why you? She asked. Ward thought carefully before answering. Because humans are used to being underestimated. We grow up that way. We survive that way. The Queen studied him as if seeing him for the first time. Around them, the galaxy waited. Slowly, deliberately, Queen Seraphine stepped down from her throne. The sound of it moving sent another wave of shock through the court. She walked forward until she stood only a few steps from the human. She looked down at him. My crew demand I serve you, human, she said, every word clear and echoing. The chamber was so silent that even breathing felt loud. Ward swallowed. I don't want a servant. Her eyes softened just slightly. That may not matter. She straightened, turned to her court, and raised her voice, and I will. The reaction was immediate and violent. Shouts, disbelief, outrage, fear. But the Queen raised one hand, and silence returned. This does not mean submission, she said. It means survival. She turned back to Ward. Know this, human. From this moment, you are no longer a minor envoy. You are a variable that will reshape empires. Ward exhaled slowly. I really wish, he said quietly, someone had warned me. The Queen almost smiled. Far above the planet, unseen by either of them, ancient forces began to adjust their calculations. Humanity had entered the game, and the galaxy would never be simple again. The chamber did not return to normal after the Queen's declaration. Nothing did. Captain Elias Ward was escorted from the hall not as a prisoner, but not as a guest either. The guards walked beside him instead of behind him, their long steps matching his pace. It was a silent message to the watching court. The human was important now. Dangerous, perhaps. Untouchable, for the moment. Queen Seraphine remained behind, facing her court, alone. Outside the palace, the city of crystal towers and floating paths continued as if nothing had changed. Traders moved between levels. Light vehicles drifted through the air. Citizens spoke in calm voices. Yet beneath it all, information was spreading faster than sound. The queen had chosen to serve a human. Inside a secure chamber far from the throne room, Ward sat at a smooth table that adjusted itself to his height. A faint glow surrounded the walls, shifting colors slowly, meant to calm the mind. It did not work. He folded his hands and waited. Then the door opened, and Queen Seraphine entered alone, without guards. That alone unsettled him. She did not sit across from him at first. She walked to a viewing wall and looked out at her capital world. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before. "You are wondering what you have been dragged into," she said. Ward gave a small nod. Yes, and how to get out of it without starting a war. She turned slightly, studying him from the side. There is no exit that does not involve war. The question is, how large it becomes. She sat down across from him then. The table shifted again, creating equal space between them. "My people do not understand weakness," she continued. "Service to them is not shame. It is a confession. A confession that another mind sees paths we cannot." Ward frowned. "Then why does half your court look ready to tear me apart?" "Because they believe the confession should not be public," she replied. "And because your species frightens them." "We don't look frightening." "No," the queen agreed. "That is the problem." She placed one hand on the table. "You are small, new, disordered. You break patterns. You survive losses that would cripple us. That makes you difficult to predict." Ward leaned back slightly. "That's just called being bad at planning." Her eyes brightened faintly. "Exactly." A soft sound interrupted them. A projection rose from the table, forming shapes and symbols. Ward recognized star maps, trade lanes, fleet movements. "The convergence begins sooner than we expected," the queen said. "3 rival powers are already reacting to today's event." Ward studied the map. Reacting how? 2 are gathering fleets. 1 is spreading a narrative that I have been compromised, that humanity is manipulating us. Ward grimaced. "We just got here." "You have been noticed," she said. "That cannot be undone." He looked up. "So what does service actually mean in practice?" The queen paused. This time she did not answer quickly. "It means," she said slowly, "that when strategic decisions arise that will affect the survival of my empire, I will ask for your input, and I will listen." Ward blinked. "That's it? For us?" she said. "That is everything." He shook his head slightly. "Back home we call that an advisor." "Yes," she replied. "But you are not trained. You are not loyal by blood or history. You are not bound by our traditions. That makes your perspective clean." Ward rubbed his face. "You're putting a lot of faith in a species you met today." She met his eyes. "I am putting faith in mathematics that does not lie." Before he could respond, an alert shimmered through the room. The projection changed. A fleet symbol appeared at the edge of Virex Hall space. Ward leaned forward. "Is that one of the rivals?" "Yes," the queen said. "They call it a patrol." "It is not." The symbol expanded, showing ship numbers. Too many for a patrol. Too few for a full invasion. Ward studied it carefully. "They're testing you." "They are testing you," the queen corrected. "They want to see if the human matters." Ward was quiet for several seconds. "Do you want me to suggest something?" he finally asked. The Queen inclined her head. That is why I am here. Ward pointed to the map. If you meet them with force, they'll escalate. If you ignore them, they'll push further. Either way, you lose control of the tempo. She watched him closely. And the alternative? Let them enter, he said. But don't fight them. Talk to their supply lines instead. The Queen frowned. Explain. They're far from home. Their ships need maintenance, fuel, information updates. Humans learned early that wars are won by feeding lines, not front lines. He tapped several nodes on the map. Disrupt these. Quietly. No attacks, no blame. Just delays. The Queen considered this. They will accuse us. Let them, Ward said. But don't respond with weapons. Respond with confusion. Silence filled the room again. Finally, the Queen nodded once. Very well. Orders were issued. Over the next cycle, nothing dramatic happened. No battles, no explosions. The rival fleet drifted deeper into Viraxal territory, then slowed. Reports came in of missed deliveries, malfunctioning navigation data, misrouted supply ships. The fleet commander sent increasingly angry messages. The Queen did not answer. Instead, a diplomatic envoy arrived from a neutral system, carrying questions about trade disruptions. Then another and another. The rival power began arguing with its own allies. Ward watched it unfold from a distance, uneasy. I didn't think it would work this fast, he admitted. The Queen allowed herself a brief expression of satisfaction. Neither did they. But not all reactions were external. Within the Viraxal Empire, unrest grew. Traditionalists gathered. Religious factions spoke of imbalance. Some whispered that the Queen had broken an ancient cosmic rule. One night, Ward was awakened by a soft alarm in his quarters. The lights shifted to alert red. A voice spoke calmly, "Remain where you are." Moments later, the Queen entered, flanked by guards. "There has been an attempt," she said. Ward sat up. "On you? On you?" she corrected. His stomach dropped. "That was fast." "The faster reaction," she said, "was my decision." She turned to the guards. "Leave us." They hesitated, then obeyed. "I will not hide you." Ward stared at her. "That seems risky." "Yes," she agreed, "but necessary." She met his gaze. "If I shelter you, I confirm their fear. If I stand openly with you, I force the conflict into the light." He sighed. Humans usually like to ease into galaxy-level attention. She almost smiled. "Then you should not have survived." Outside, the city lights continued to glow. Elsewhere, ancient powers adjusted their plans again. The test had begun, and humanity was no longer just watching. The announcement was made across the Empire at the start of the next cycle. It was calm, formal, carefully chosen. A foreign fleet had entered Viraxal space under the claim of routine movement. The Queen acknowledged their presence. No weapons were fired. No threats were issued. The situation, the message said, was under control. That message was meant for the citizens. Another message traveled much farther. Across trade networks and diplomatic channels, the same information spread, but with added detail. A rival power had sent ships without agreement. Supply disruptions were increasing. Communication delays were becoming common. And one more detail spread quietly, almost as a rumor. A human advisor now stood beside the Viraxal Queen. Captain Elias Ward watched the reactions unfold from a secure observation chamber high above the capital. Streams of data flowed across transparent panels, translated into formats he could understand. Trade fluctuations, political statements, Media analysis from dozens of species. They're circling the story, he said. Queen Seraphine stood beside him, hands clasped behind her back. They do not know how to attack it. They want to paint you as weak, Ward said, but they can't decide whether to insult you or fear you. That uncertainty, she replied, is spreading. Elsewhere in the palace, others were far less calm. A group of high-ranking officials gathered in a sealed chamber, voices raised. They argued not about the rival fleet, but about the human. He is turning us into a spectacle, one said. He is turning us into a shield, another argued. He is a trigger, a third snapped. The galaxy will not accept this arrangement. At the center of the argument stood one of the war oracles, silent, watching. They already are not accepting it, the oracle finally said. That is the point. Back in orbit, the rival fleet commander sent another message. This one was public. It accused the Viraxal of interference, of sabotage, of dishonorable behavior. It demanded a direct response. The Queen read the message once. Then she handed it to Ward. What would a human do? She asked. Ward read it carefully. Then he smiled faintly. They want a reaction, he said. So don't give them one they understand. The reply that went out was brief. It expressed concern for the fleet's difficulties. It offered technical assistance. It invited the commander to send representatives to discuss logistical cooperation. The message was polite, helpful, and deeply unsettling. The rival commander delayed answering. That delay was noticed. Across the galaxy, analysts began to comment. Why was a powerful fleet struggling without combat? Why was a dominant empire responding with calm instead of force? Speculation grew. Meanwhile, inside Viraxal space, the fleet's situation worsened. Fuel shipments arrived late. Repair vessels were rerouted. Local merchants hesitated to sell supplies, citing contract confusion. Nothing illegal, nothing aggressive, just friction. Ward watched the reports with a mix of satisfaction and concern. They'll snap eventually, he said. Pride doesn't last well under pressure. And when they do, the Queen asked. They make a mistake, he replied. That mistake came sooner than expected. A small detachment of the rival fleet broke formation and moved toward a populated Viraxal system, claiming navigational error. The move was subtle, but not subtle enough. The Queen's advisors reacted instantly, calling for defensive deployment. Ward shook his head. Not yet. The Queen hesitated, then raised her hand. Hold. The detachment entered the system. Local sensors tracked them closely. Civilian traffic adjusted calmly. No panic spread. Then, something unexpected happened. A human signal appeared on open channels. It was not a threat. It was a request. Ward's voice carried clearly. This is Captain Elias Ward, representing humanity and acting advisor to the Viraxal Empire. Your course adjustment places you near civilian infrastructure. Please confirm your intent. The rival commander hesitated, then replied sharply, accusing the humans of overstepping. Ward responded calmly. We are not interfering. We are documenting. That single word echoed. Documenting. Within minutes, neutral observers tuned in. Trade guilds, media networks, independent monitors. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The detachment adjusted course away from the planet. The rival fleet commander sent a furious message demanding explanation. Ward did not respond. Instead, the Queen issued a formal notice inviting neutral parties to review the situation. The galaxy leaned in. Inside the palace, tension reached a breaking point. A group of extremists attempted to force their way into Ward's quarters. They were stopped without violence. But the message was clear. Not everyone accepted this path. The Queen addressed the court that same cycle. She stood tall, voice steady, and spoke openly of the convergence, of the future scene, of the reason she had chosen this course. "I do not serve a human," she said. "I serve survival." The words were recorded, shared, replayed. Some were reassured. Others were not. That night, Ward and the Queen spoke privately again. "You could still step away," she said. "Return to your people. The damage is already done." Ward looked out at the stars beyond the palace window. "If I leave now, they'll say you were manipulated. If I stay, they'll say you chose this." She nodded. "There is no path without consequence." He turned to her. "Humans learned something early. When there's no safe path, you walk forward and adapt." She studied him. "You do not sound afraid." "I am," he said, "but fear doesn't mean stop." Elsewhere, the rival fleet finally broke. Their commander issued a public ultimatum, accusing the Viraxal of indirect aggression and demanding withdrawal of influence from the human. The Queen's reply was simple. She refused. The galaxy reacted instantly. Markets shifted. Alliances strained. Military readiness levels rose across multiple systems. War seemed closer than ever, and yet no shots were fired. Instead, something stranger happened. Several smaller powers issued statements supporting the Viraxal response, not out of loyalty, but curiosity. They had seen the chaos of direct conflict. They wanted to see if another way existed. Humanity's name began appearing in discussions where it never had before. Not as a conqueror, as a variable. Ward received a message from Earth that cycle. It was short. "You have everyone's attention. Be careful." He smiled, tiredly. "That ship sailed," he muttered. High above the capital, ancient monitoring systems adjusted their models again. The human was still alive. The Queen was still standing. And the galaxy was learning a dangerous truth. Humans did not need to win battles to change outcomes. They only needed to change how the game was played. The first sign that things were breaking did not come from space. It came from inside the Empire. Protests began quietly. Not crowds in the streets, but messages passed through closed networks. Scholars questioned the Queen's choice. Religious leaders spoke carefully about imbalance. Military officers argued that patience was becoming weakness. Captain Elias Ward felt it before he saw it. The palace corridors grew quieter. Conversation stopped when he entered a room. Eyes followed him, no longer only curious, but measuring. Queen Sarathan noticed it too. "They are afraid of losing control," she said one cycle, standing with Ward before a wide star display. "Not to you, to uncertainty." Ward crossed his arms. "That's familiar. Humans panic when systems stop behaving the way they expect." She looked at him. "And what do humans do then?" He thought for a moment. "Some try to force the system back. Others rebuild it." Her eyes lingered on him. "Which kind are you?" He gave a small smile. "I guess we're about to find out." The rival fleet still remained in Viraxal space, its movements limited, its supply lines tangled. But the danger had not passed. If anything, it had changed shape. Now, the threat was political. A formal council session was called. All major factions would attend. The Queen announced she would speak openly. Ward was warned not to attend. "They will try to use your presence as proof," one advisor said, "that you dominate this court." Ward agreed to remain outside. The chamber was sealed. Inside, Queen Sarathan stood alone before the gathered leaders of her empire. No guards flanked her. No symbols of power rested at her side. She spoke calmly. She explained the convergence again, the future scene, the collapse avoided only through adaptation. Some listened, others did not. "You have abandoned divine authority," one leader said. You have bent to an outsider. I have bent to reality, the Queen replied. You risk civil fracture, another warned. I risk extinction if I do nothing. Voices rose, accusations sharpened. Finally, one spoke the words that had been forming beneath every argument. Choose, they said, the Empire or the human? The chamber fell silent. The Queen did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. I choose survival. That answer was not enough for them. The session ended without resolution. Outside the chamber, Ward waited. When the doors opened and the Queen emerged, he saw it in her posture. They are going to move, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. Soon. That night, the palace entered restricted status. Security tightened. Movement was limited. Officially, it was a precaution. Unofficially, it was preparation. The next cycle, reports came in from multiple systems. Fleets repositioning, commands questioned, regional governors delaying orders, fragmentation. Ward watched the data scroll past, his jaw tight. If this turns into internal conflict, it will not, the Queen said firmly. He looked at her. How can you be sure? Because I will remove the choice, she said. He turned fully toward her. What does that mean? She did not answer immediately. Instead, she summoned the full court, not behind closed doors, not filtered through channels, public, recorded, shared across the Empire and beyond. Ward stood beside her this time, in full view. The chamber filled. Tension thickened the air. The Queen stepped forward. For generations, she began, our rule has rested on the belief that we are complete, that our way is sufficient for all futures. She paused. That belief is no longer true. Murmurs spread. She raised her voice. I have seen the paths ahead. Alone, we fall. Together with humanity, we endure. Outrage followed. You would place us beneath them? A voice shouted. The Queen turned toward Ward. Slowly, deliberately, she removed the symbol of divine authority from her form. It dimmed as it separated, the light fading. Gasps echoed. I will not rule as a god, she said. I will rule as a leader who listens. She stepped down from the raised platform, and then she did something no one expected. She lowered herself, not in submission, but in acknowledgement, and spoke clearly. My crew demanded I serve the human. I accepted. She looked up at Ward. And now I redefine that service. She rose. I serve not a man, but a method, a way of thinking that adapts instead of breaks. The chamber erupted. Some shouted in anger, some in fear. Others watched in silence. Ward felt every eye on him. He stepped forward. I didn't ask for this, he said. His voice carried, simple and clear. And I don't want your empire. The noise softened. I'm not here to rule you. I'm here because if you fall, the shock will tear through the galaxy. Humans know what it's like to survive collapse. We've done it more than once. He looked around. You don't need to follow us. You just need to stop pretending you're finished evolving. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. Decisions were being made, not all in the Queen's favor. That same cycle, an attempt was made. Not violent, not obvious. A command signal was sent, authorizing a fleet movement without the Queen's approval. A test. A challenge. The Queen responded immediately. She did not countermand it. She allowed it. And then she did something irreversible. She opened the command channel to humanity. Ward stared at the interface. Are you sure? No, she said. But certainty is no longer an option. Human advisors, long silent observers, were brought into strategic discussion. not to command, but to question. Why move fleets this way? Why maintain rigid formations? Why treat allies as fixed assets? The answers unsettled the Virex-Hau command structure, but they also revealed weaknesses long ignored. Within cycles, the unauthorized fleet movement stalled, not from force, but from confusion. Orders conflicted, authority blurred. The attempt collapsed. The message was clear. Power had shifted. Not to humanity, to flexibility. Outside the Empire, the rival powers watched carefully. They had expected fracture. They had not expected transformation. A new narrative began spreading. The Virex-Hau were no longer rigid, no longer predictable. And humans were no longer small. They were central. Late that cycle, Ward and the Queen stood alone again, looking out at the stars. You've changed everything, Ward said quietly. She shook her head. No, I allowed change. He looked at her. They'll never let you go back. She met his gaze. There is no back. Far beyond their view, alliances recalculated. The convergence tightened, and the galaxy began to understand that this was not a temporary arrangement. It was a turning point. The move came quietly. No fleet announcement. No declaration of war. Across several borders at once, ships began to reposition. Old rivals. Careful allies. Powers that had ruled for longer than humanity had known spaceflight. They did not form one army. They formed a pressure. Trade routes tightened. Information access slowed. Neutral systems were advised to reduce contact with the Virex-Hau Empire and its human partners. It was containment. Captain Elias Ward watched the pattern form on the strategic display. His face was calm, but his hands were tight at his sides. They're trying to choke you, he said. Queen Seraphine nodded, without firing a single weapon. They think that if they isolate you, this experiment ends quietly, Ward continued. No open conflict. No risk. She looked at him. And humanity? They think we'll panic, he said, or pull back. She turned from the display and studied him. Will you? Ward met her gaze. No. The Queen let out a slow breath. Then neither will I. The coalition sent its message the next cycle. It was framed as concern. Concern for stability. Concern for balance. Concern for the dangerous influence of an untested species. They demanded that the Virex-Hau Empire formally sever strategic cooperation with humanity. In return, trade would resume. Borders would relax. Peace would be preserved. The message was sent to the Queen. She did not answer it. Instead, she summoned representatives from every neutral power willing to listen. Humans were invited to speak. For the first time, humanity stood in a galactic forum, not as a requester, not as a warning, but as a participant. Ward stood before the assembled projections and physical delegates. He did not wear a uniform. He did not stand on a raised platform. He stood on the same level. We're not here to take control, he said simply. If we wanted that, this would look very different. Some delegates reacted. Others watched carefully. The coalition believes order comes from control, Ward continued. Humans learned the hard way that control breaks under pressure. Adaptation doesn't. A delegate interrupted. You destabilize long-standing systems. Ward nodded. Because they were already failing. We just made it visible. The Queen spoke next. My empire has ruled through certainty, she said. That certainty is gone. Not because of humanity, but because the future does not care how long we have existed. Silence followed. Then a smaller power spoke. If the coalition moves to enforce isolation, they asked, what happens? Ward answered calmly. We don't fight them. That caused a stir. We let the pressure reveal the cracks, he continued. closed systems fail faster than open ones. The coalition expected resistance. They did not expect refusal. When no fleets moved, no threats were made, confusion spread. Markets reacted badly to uncertainty. Systems that relied on rigid trade structures began to feel strain. Smaller powers questioned whether isolation was worth the cost. Information leaked. Human analysts shared open data showing how the containment harmed neutral systems more than its targets. No accusations. Just numbers. The coalition's unity began to weaken. Inside the Veraxol Empire, the final test came. A senior military faction attempted to force a decision, demanding the Queen either reclaim absolute authority or step aside. But Queen listened. Then she made her last, greatest choice. She abdicated, not in defeat, in trust. She transferred full operational authority to a shared council structure that included civilian leaders, military planners, and human advisors. The empire did not collapse. It breathed. The attempted power grab failed because there was no single throne left to seize. When news spread, the coalition hesitated. This was no longer a queen serving a human. This was an empire changing how it existed. The coalition's final message arrived soon after. It was shorter, colder. They would withdraw containment measures. They would observe developments. It was not surrender, but it was retreat. Across the galaxy, systems took notice. Humanity's name began appearing in new contexts, not as a threat, as a stabilizer. Weeks later, Ward stood once more in the great chamber where this had begun. It looked the same, but it felt different. Queen Seraphine stood beside him, not above, not below. "My crew demanded I serve you," she said quietly, repeating the words that had echoed across the stars. Ward shook his head. "You never did." She looked at him. "No, I served what you represent." "And what's that?" he asked. She looked out at the gathered representatives of many species. "The courage to change without conquest," she said, "the strength to lead without ruling." Ward smiled faintly. "We're still figuring it out ourselves." She inclined her head. "That may be why it works." Far beyond the chamber, in places no single empire controlled, calculations were being rewritten. Humanity had not won a war, had not claimed territory, had not demanded loyalty. And yet the galaxy had shifted around it. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they were willing to step into uncertainty and build something new instead of defending something broken. The convergence passed, not with fire, but with change. And long after, historians would argue whether humanity saved the galaxy or simply taught it how to survive. The argument would never end. But the future would continue. And for the first time in a very long while, it would do so together.